say, Pastor Bor, you're crazy. That could never happen in the United States of America, the land of the free and the home of the brave. Listen, you don't think so? You say, well, we have the Constitution. We have the First Amendment. How could this ever happen? Listen, prophecy tells us that this beast that rises from the earth has two horns like a lamb, but at the same time that it has the horns, it speaks like a dragon. Let me ask you, is that kind of like a split personality type? Absolutely. You say, how is it possible that it has two horns like a lamb, the two principles that Jesus recognized, separation of church and state, civil and religious matters, separate one from another, and you're saying that at the same time that it has those two principles, that it's going to speak like a dragon, it's going to speak like Rome, it's going to persecute like Rome, it's going to join church and state like Rome? How could you say such a thing? The fact is that prophecy tells us that it's going to be that type of thing because it's still going to have the two horns like a lamb, which we've identified as civil and religious liberty. But at the same time that it has those, it's going to speak like a dragon. In other words, the United States is not necessarily going to eradicate or get rid of the First Amendment, but it is going to act contrary to the First Amendment. And you say, how is this possible? Well, the United States government has three branches. And you know which ones they are. They're the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. The executive branch enforces the laws. The legislative branch makes the laws or writes the laws. And the judicial branch, primarily the Supreme Court, interprets the laws and tells you whether they are constitutional or not constitutional. Let me ask you, what if Congress should write a law and actually give it for enforcement, and it's taken to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court says this law is unconstitutional? What happens? The law does not go, right? But what happens if the Congress enacts a law that is unconstitutional and somebody appeals it to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court says it is constitutional? Let me ask you, will that law be enforced? It most certainly will be enforced. Even if a law goes against the Constitution, if the Supreme Court says that law goes, it goes. So let me ask you, which is the most powerful branch of government? You know, most of the time when I ask this, people say the executive. They enforce the law. But not really. The most powerful branch of government is the judicial branch, primarily the Supreme Court of the United States of America. And if you don't believe that, all you have to do is remember the election of the year 2000. A very contemporary event. You remember what happened in Florida? All the hanging chads? Well, you know, that'll stick in our memory forever. The fiasco of the hanging chads. And you know that you had lawyers involved and they were taking it to this circuit court and to the appeals court and the lawyers were fighting it. But when the Supreme Court said George Bush won, case closed. George Bush became president of the United States of America. And actually, the Supreme Court elected the president of the United States of America. Now, this is the scary thing. The Supreme Court presently has 5 Roman Catholic judges. John Roberts, the Chief Justice, Antonin Scalia, Clarence Thomas, Anthony Kennedy, and Samuel Alito. Within the next 8 years or so, some of the more liberal judges on the Supreme Court, Justice Ginsburg, for example, it was just operated on for, I think it was pancreatic cancer. And so many of these more liberal judges are going to pass. What if we had 1 or 2 more Roman Catholics named to the Supreme Court?